This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You are tuned to The Baseline. Cali, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Man, we have just finished coming off another hellacious snowstorm. We cannot wait for the spring to roll up here in the Northeast. And listen, I'm a little surprised by y'all. I mean, I can't believe that the Baseline brothers have gotten a little bit closer, not quite yet into the same state. We getting there. It's going to happen at some point. But on location, my brother from another mother, repping out now, not out of Fort Lauderdale, at least for the next few days. He'll be repping out of Philly. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to our boy Kevin Refuse, because I'm sure he's feeling some kind of way about this. But my man Warren Shaw helping us do the show, relocated out of Philadelphia for a couple days. What's good, man?
I'm chilling, man. You can call me the Broad Street Bully right now up here in the Philadelphia area. A lot of ice and snow on the ground a little bit, but again, at least it's not snowing while I'm in town. Hopefully maybe catch a Sixers game while I'm here. Maybe not. We'll see what's good, but happy to be on the show with you as always, man. Salute to all the fans, listeners of the NBA Baseline. Great episode on tap, man. It's getting close to that playoff time, man. So, we got to dive right into all of that action.
Definitely, man. Actually, I was going to call you Triple G, because that's your boy right there. And he looked pretty impressive this weekend against Daniel Jacobs going the distance.
Yeah, man. I like Daniel Jacobs. Obviously, he has a great story, too. But Triple G is that dude. You know what I mean? Ain't nobody messing with that cat right now.
How gangster. That's probably one of the best boxing names to have right now, nicknames in the game right now, to be called Triple G. I mean, not only is it money, but it's just gangster when you hear it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like you just don't want to get in the ring with a dude named Triple G.
No, it definitely resonates. And there are people who do not want to get in the ring with this dude. He's had a hard time making fights because people realize, he's punishing. And he's taking some of the steam off so he can have the fights last a little longer to give people kind of their money's worth. But listen, that's a monster right there. Nobody wants to go up against that dude.
Definitely. All right. Well, speaking of a monster, we have a monster of a situation taking place right now in the NBA as we start to close in on those final games of the regular season. And there are 3 spots that are up for grabs in the Eastern Conference. In a moment, Sean and I will have a discussion about which 3 teams we think will finalize the Eastern Conference playoff picture. Also in our segment of The Drop, as we get towards the end of the regular season, whether we're talking about teams that are in the playoffs or teams that are pretty much going to call it a wrap for this season, there are some players that are out there considered as free agents, and their destinations may have an impact moving forward for other teams that might be looking towards offering up not just the deal, but also bolstering their rosters. Are they worthy of any extended long-term or significant increases to what they're already getting on their current teams? So that's what we'll be looking at. And of course, we got to cover the coast to coast, where we have some pretty interesting topics to throw at you that's been taking place over the last week in the NBA. So we can't wait to get into it. You know how to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA is his Twitter handle, mine at GameFaceLee, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. Be sure to hit us up on any one of those components. We're available on all the major platforms, people. Available on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Microsoft TuneIn, Player FM. Also available on iHeartRadio, available on Google Music, and also the Roku channel. So download any one of these platforms and allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things in the NBA. Big shout outs to our peoples, 16 Wins a Ring. Be sure to go to www.16winsaring.com. They provide the most intriguing and up-to-date content discussing the NBA, the Baseline NBA podcast. Also, our people's the Drive and Dish podcast are featured on 16 Wins a Ring. So get all of your NBA flavor directly at the 16 Wins a Ring website. You know how we do, and you know how we roll. It's time now for the breakdown.
Time to break it
down. Time now for the breakdown. Cali, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And our subject for the breakdown this week, a little bit earlier, we were talking about the Miami Heat and how they have been making this impressive run. And ultimately, we felt like with the way that they're rolling and the confidence that's building down in that, southeast region, that there is a likelihood that the Miami Heat could possibly capture that 8th, maybe 7th seed. But now that we're seeing games play themselves out, there's a couple of more teams that you can throw into the mix in which their positioning maybe a week ago was pretty solid. Teams like the Indiana Pacers and teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, after getting Chris Middleton, and you're getting a quality season from guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo. All of a sudden now we're seeing this playoff picture starting to broaden itself up just a little bit more. And now we're beginning to wonder how solid are not just the eighth is the eighth spot, but how solid is the sixth, seventh, and eighth spots in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. And Shaw, when you look at it, this is a three-place race with 4, maybe possibly 5 teams all in the mix. You have the Indiana Pacers, the Detroit Pistons, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Miami Heat, and even the Chicago Bulls. And despite the injury, and we talked about this on our latest episode of the Power 5 with Dwayne Wade going down, it's still not considered an out for the Chicago Bulls to still find their way into making the Eastern Conference playoffs for this season.
Right. It's very, very mixed up and jumbled here in these final couple spots in the Eastern Conference. And what's funny to me, as we're even talking about this, I was just reading something before we came on air to record, and the Heat feel like they have a chance to maybe even catch Atlanta. Now, Atlanta would have to do some sliding, from the 5th slot. But technically,
it's not as if they're not helping their cause. They've already lost 3 straight. And again, this is this topsy-turvy type season for the Atlanta Hawks. 1 minute they look good, and then the next minute, they look like a team that seems like they have no sense of urgency, so to speak,
right,
about how to compete and maintain where they want to be when it comes to playing in this in this playoff chase.
Right. And again, it just seems lofty, but it's not completely out of reach, if you will. But the focus of our conversations, obviously we'll stick to, the topic in terms of 6, 7, and 8 and which 3 teams are going to get in. And, to put it short and bluntly, I do feel like the Pacers are just too, I don't want to say too good, because I think that would be being overzealous, but I think they've just done enough and have enough equity in the rest of the regular season where they're definitely going to make the playoffs. Now, where they end up seeding, that's obviously very debatable. I do feel like Miami is going to make the playoffs as well too. I was listening to another podcast, the great, as you will, Bill Simmons and Zach Lowe. They were saying they really felt like the Heat might really be the 5th best team in the Eastern Conference. Their standings are not going to reflect that. And again, we just talked about it. Maybe it could if they went on some miraculous run. But I feel like Miami is just too hot to not get into the dance, if you will. And that final spot, bro, that is where it really, really becomes down to things. Chicago just seems to keep mucking things up and wanting to fight. They've actually played a little bit better since the Wade injury. They're spreading the ball a little bit more, and some guys are getting more touches. Butler's become more of a facilitator. Rondo, as I said on the Power 5, has gotten back in the fold some too. But I really feel like I want to see Milwaukee get in there, despite all the injuries that they've had. I think it would be a great story for them to see Giannis lead this team into the playoffs. And the Pistons, I know that's your squad. I just don't feel like they have enough, and I don't really want to see them get in. There's a big game with Miami and Detroit coming up very, very soon, and I think that could have a lot of impact on Detroit's chances in terms of getting in. So I'm going to stick with what it is right now. I think the Pacers, Heat, and Bucks all get in. But again, I wouldn't be surprised on either side.
All right, well, let's go ahead and focus our attention, Shaw, first with the Indiana Pacers. And you alluded to the fact that you said, wow, this is a basketball team that it's hard pressed for you not to think that they don't get into this playoff for this year. But at the same time, it's not as if you want to talk about it with the utmost confidence. It's almost as if saying, it should be automatic because you have Paul George. But where is it that we've seen Paul George really take this team to that next level to kind of facilitate the push required? It almost seems like it's still going to be predicated on Miles Turner. And is that an unfair assessment to put this on the shoulders of their second-year player who really has come abroad under the most, I want to say, unusual circumstances, right? Because when you look at what has taken place, it isn't as if Miles Turner was being considered that guy. I think maybe to some people, there's a level of hesitation in buying into it. And until they would have actually traded Paul George, moved him out of the slot, where we have then said it with confidence that the idea is that this is about Miles Turner. It almost seems like they're handicapped to the idea that they have to do this with Paul George. But now because of this, when will the Paul George of 3 years ago come into play and bring it home for this Indiana Pacers team? When you look at the schedule that they have, it is not going to be easy for them, especially coming this upcoming week. They've got the Raptors, they've got the Jazz, they've got the Celtics, they've got the Denver Nuggets, all playoff contending basketball teams. So the incentive for them is to beat the Pacers as much as the Pacers beating them.
Well, yeah, for Indiana, you definitely hit the nail on the head in terms of Paul George needs to be the elite level player and talent that he is and capable of being. And I think we've definitely seen signs of that in the last maybe week and a half or so, where he's getting back into that, 25 plus point per game, getting 7 to 8 rebounds, getting 3, 4, 5 assists a game as well too. And this team really does need him to be their leader and take them into the promised land, and then continually hopefully get them a higher seed in this race, if you will. Again, they could potentially really catch Atlanta and be in a very, very favorable matchup, I think, for them if they were to end up with the Raptors in that 4-5 matchup. So I think they're not even looking down at the bottom. They're looking ahead, trying to catch Atlanta. And the thing you said about Miles Turner is intriguing to me because I like Miles Turner a lot. He's a great guy, comes from a great family, has his head on his shoulders rather.
Very unusual analogy you were making there. So.
Yeah, that was a ceiling as a roof thing right there. But like I said, he has a good head on his shoulders.
Sorry, I couldn't even get that out of my mouth. The linoleum is the tile. There you go.
Exactly. There we go. But I feel like I don't know that he is going to be a franchise type player. I don't think the Pacers say, okay, well, if we trade Paul George, we're going to be building around Miles Turner. He's going to be a building block per se, but he's not someone that you center your franchise around. But he has played very well.
Well, let me say this though. Let me say this though, real quick, Shaw. Because to your point, I think that should be the mentality that the Indiana Pacers should be moving towards, right? But I think the way that they dictated how they were going about this idea and the premise of possibly moving Paul George, it would almost give the perception that the building block, so to speak, is they're building around Miles Turner rather than assuming that he is part of a building block. You get what I mean? Like when you look at what the Indiana Pacers were doing, being the fact that they were a viable team, very much with confidence that they were going to be in the playoff picture. I mean, you went and you got Jeff Teague, you got rid of Paul George. You still have the supplemental pieces, around you as far as having Monte Ellis and things of that nature. By all stretches and consideration, especially with Chris Middleton going down, there was an opening that this Indiana Pacers team should be good enough to be in a conversation of being in the playoffs. But ultimately, when you make certain moves like what they were doing or trying to do during the course of it, it almost changes the perception and the narrative about building around and a building block.
Well, that's true, but I think it's almost a forced hand. If Paul George is openly coming out, or I won't say openly, but privately talking within management and all the rumors that he's going to go to LA one way or the other, I know the Pacers have much of a choice. So Miles Turner is your next best player. So technically he's a person you have to start building around, but I don't think he's your franchise piece. It's just kind of like it's attrition. So, all right, well, that guy's gone, it's the next man up until you try to start building around maybe and trading for somebody else, if that's the case, if you're the Pacers. But again, this team has all it needs to make the playoffs, and they can make some noise, especially in a favorable matchup in that first round. So I think they're going to get in, as I alluded to. Jeff Teague has been kind of touch and go the last part of the season. He was very good to begin the year. But I think they're just going to have enough. But you said this is a huge week for them. If they can, win 3 of these 4 games or so, even if they go 500, they just can't go below that to really solidify their place in these Eastern Conference playoffs.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Kyle Lee, Warren Shaw of The Baseline NBA podcast. Our subject of the breakdown, we're talking about the Eastern Conference playoff picture, the bottom third. Who's getting in? 5-team race for a three-slot chase. So ultimately, Shaw, we're talking about confidence in the Indiana Pacers. Let me flip the script and talk about another team that's in that Central Division we were alluding to a moment ago about how disappointing this has really been. And listen, we can even make the argument that the Detroit Pistons have been one of the more disappointing teams in the NBA. I mean, really high up there. And, I talk in praises about, what Stan Van Gundy has been able to do, but I'm beginning to look at that. This is more than just Stan Van Gundy. This is beginning to look at more of the personnel. But I will say that I should put a lot of that on Stan Van Gundy because he is the president of basketball operations. He's the one that's making these moves happen. So when I look at this basketball team, there actually may still be hope for them yet, Shaw, because they have a very favorable schedule over the course of the next week, which could put them right back into the playoff chase. Right now, they're sitting outside of the playoff picture in the Eastern Conference, but then they got games against the Phoenix Suns, the Brooklyn Nets, the Chicago Bulls, the Orlando Magic, the New York Knicks, and then they play against the Miami Heat, which I think will be the most critical game that will help us determine whether or not the Pistons are in or possibly that the Pistons are out, because they have a hellacious schedule in the month of April to finish things out, playing Toronto, Houston, Memphis, and Washington. But these first 5 games that they're playing are so critical for us to determine if whether or not they're going to be one of those teams in.
Well, that goes to say it all right there. For me, it's, if you're a playoff team, then you need to go out there and get the wins that you're supposed to get. I mean, and that's just point blank it. You have to get those W's. And if they fail to get that, then we'll see exactly who they are and the fact that they shouldn't be in the playoffs, to begin with. I like Van Gundy, and I think we've talked a lot about them, on this show and him on this show, in terms of how he's tried to build this team in the mold of his old Orlando ball clubs and things of that nature. But it just hasn't worked. The Reggie Jackson experiment has become a total failure. The fact that a guy that has been
it is, in a Trump word, a death spiral.
Right. And it's messed up because, you're looking at Ish Smith, who, we kind of like on our show here, but everyone by all accounts shouldn't be a starting point guard in the NBA. But they've had to resort to giving him kind of plus minutes, and they're really sharing that point guard position, if you will. And that's just a weird thing to be in. And the lineup continues to switch. Tobias Harris was, supposed to be the 6th man. Now he's back in the starting lineup. And John Lewar's gone to the bench, and, Drummond has had his bouts where he hasn't been that effective. And we all know about his free throw shooting. Team has a lot of holes. Marcus Morris, too, kind of been inconsistent. KCP, who I really, really like. Feel like he hasn't, since his injury, hasn't really been able to be consistent, although he's getting 30, 35 minutes a night. Like he's out there. He's just not having the same production. And I don't know if it's a matter of, not having the point guard play to set him up. So this team is in a very precarious situation to me, and that's why I feel like they're not going to get in. They just have too many questions, and you shouldn't really be having to flip your lineup around at this point in the season, especially when you don't have injuries. Pretty much everybody's healthy. It's just that you haven't found the right combinations to make it work. Yeah,
well, and the fact that this basketball team has been so streaky. I mean, really, really streaky. I mean, they're more streaky than the Atlanta Hawks. And what's worse is the fact that you don't have confident players that will help you come out of that streak in a efficient fashion. Like when you look at the Atlanta Hawks, when they went into their funk, you knew that it came down to guys like Paul Millsap and Dwight Howard. It wasn't going to be Dennis Schroeder or Kent Bazemore. Those are supplemental pieces. They play better. They increase the chances. But this comes down to Budenholzer, execution, and your marquee players, Paul Millsap, Dwight Howard. They figured out a way, and they replanted them. Because remember, Shaw, there was a point where they were 10 games over 500, and then suddenly were 5 games under 500 at one point. I mean, that type of swing was ridiculous. But when the Pistons, it almost is something that just goes out of control. And even if they bounce back, it's not with a sustainability that gives you confidence that like when you look at this basketball team right now, you can't even say with the utmost confidence that they could wind up being a 500 basketball team. Well, I mean, we don't know whether or not a 500 basketball team is going to cap out the 8th spot. But even if that were to be the case, if any team gets over 500, you can say with confidence they're going to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. And the likelihood that the Detroit Pistons, at the way that they trend, it's not giving you confidence that they'll even come out as a 41 and a 41 basketball team. Right.
And there's some crazy signs about this team. They don't really turn the ball over much. You know what I mean? They're actually second in terms of in turnovers allowed, or not allowed, that they actually give up. So they only give up the ball 11.8 times a game, that's great. They take care of the basketball. But we're talking about a team that wanted to build themselves in the mold of the old Orlando Magic teams, but they shoot 33%, 32%, really from the 3-point line, 28th in the league. And there's just some things here about what Van Gundy wants to do and the actual roster that he's constructed that don't seem to mesh up for me. They rebound the ball great. And they, one of the better offensive rebounding teams in the league, so they shoot a lot of twos and get some nice some decent points in the paint, if you will. But this doesn't really seem to be the way that he wants to play, and he doesn't have the personnel. But he's responsible for the personnel he has on his roster. So I don't know what's going to happen with this Pistons team moving forward, but I would suspect that there's going to be changes, especially if they don't make the playoffs. Reggie Jackson is all but gone one way or the other. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if they, start really taking calls on Andre Drummond as well, as like some of the trade rumors had going on about a month ago. I don't know how legitimate they are, but they might tip their toe in the water a little bit there and try to see what's up. But I think this whole roster is up for debate because it's clearly not working. And we're talking about them just getting in the playoffs. They got in last year, and we're hoping to take a next step. If you don't even get in this year, then what is this roster really trying to do?
Definitely. And then I think you also have to look at, well, what is the actual plan? Like, what is this centered around? What is this team centered around being? Even in the, back in the days with the Detroit Pistons, and you had the, Larry Brown as the head coach, you understood when you had Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, and these guys, you kind of knew what this basketball team was going to be like. That, you didn't have an ultimate superstar. They kind of emerged as stars within themselves. They were castaways from other teams, but they all came with a centralized purpose to play under the Brown system. In this particular case, I'm still trying to figure out, is this based on the Van Gundy system, or is this based on the talent that he has evaluated and brought onto this basketball team? Because there's so many moving parts, and some of these guys are still unproven, and then you start looking at the tenure of some of these guys being on this team, and you keep saying to yourself, all right, how much longer do you continue to go with some of these players? You tune to The Baseline. Kyle, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. We are breaking down the discussion about the final 3 spots in the Eastern Conference playoff chase. There are 5 teams vying for the opportunity to play in this year's playoff. Are they equipped? Are they ready to make that run? All right, Shaw, let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about, that team that we were just alluding to not too long ago. We talked about them last week, the Miami Heat. This is a team that is just oozing with confidence, okay? We got potato grams being sent to Hassan Whiteside. Dion Waiters is being profiled on most major sports media outlets. I mean, this is a basketball team, by no stretch of the imagination, it should be getting this kind of pub right now when you look at how this roster is constructed. But yet, if you look at all of the 5 teams that we've been talking about, they are probably the most confident of the bunch, and to us would deserving of the most confidence that they should be in the playoffs by the time that the regular season ends.
Yeah, to me, they're the scariest team in this bottom quarter, if you will, of teams in the Eastern Conference. I don't think anybody at the top is like, oh yeah, I can't wait to play the Miami Heat. I don't think that's happening at all. And that's not disrespecting, the Bucks or the Pacers or anybody like that too. I think if you're at the top, you're hoping maybe Detroit gets in, you're hoping maybe Chicago gets in, because those teams seem to be a little bit more dysfunctional. But you're not lining up to play this Miami Heat team at all for whatever reason. Again, we've talked about it, kind of at length here. They figured things out. They shoot the 3 ball extremely well. They have great spacing at this point. Hassan Whiteside has kind of bought into the system. We all talk about going to Waiters Island, although he's been injured, and hopefully he'll be back pretty soon. But Goran Dragic has been a godsend for them at the point guard position since kind of understanding and redefining his role at the midway point. This is a team that just has it all together. Spoelstra has complete control of this roster. And again, like I said, nobody wants this team to get in, and they sure as hell don't want to play them in the first round.
Well, definitely the schedule is not favoring for them to get in. I mean,
tough.
As much as we're talking about this team with confidence that they should and are deserving to be in this playoff chase, they, like you said, this is a tough schedule for them. They still, out of the 13 games, they have 7 at home, but those 7 home games, they've got the Portland Trail Blazers, the Toronto Raptors, okay? And then they've got the Denver Nuggets and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, the toughest is really the games that are going to be on the road, because they're playing against the Boston Celtics, the Detroit Pistons. They'll play against the Toronto Raptors again, and then they'll ultimately play the Washington Wizards. All of these teams, and then even the Charlotte Hornets, while they're not going to be in this playoff chase, they can play playoff spoilers. So their road games, minus the New York Knicks on their schedule, their road games are going to be as critical as the games that they hold down the fort at home. And as long as to me, if they can at least attain 7 or 8 of these 13 games, I think with confidence, giving the schedule. And it's kind of funny, Shaw, as I flip through these 5 teams and the remaining schedule that they have, none of these teams have easy paths to getting into the playoffs in the month of April. Like, they have hellacious schedules. I don't know if that was the intent by the committee and Adam Silver, say, hey, maybe this is going to make the Eastern Conference playoff chase interesting, is by making sure that the bottom 5 teams are going to have the most hellacious schedule, to have to run through in order to get in. But this could not have been a better setup, because now all of these teams, it's so critical that they come in with a wave of momentum, because the month of April will not be kind to them at all.
Yeah, it's weird. I think I guess maybe I've never really paid this close attention to it, but it seems like there's been more East Coast teams having to travel out west, or even just
during
more
the final
East
month
and
of the
West
season. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's more than it usually has been, and I don't know, that's based on how they tried to balance the schedule some this year and with the nights off and all of that. So maybe it pushed some of these other West Coast trips a little bit further back or whatever, but. It does seem to be a little bit more difficult, especially for these final teams trying to get in here. And like you said, that Heat schedule is nothing nice. And having played the Wizards twice in your final, whatever it is, 12 or 13 games, including a season finale against the Wizards, who could very well be trying to fight for a top seed in the Eastern Conference themselves, either 2 or 1, depending how things go. I don't know that people will be taking games off and all of that. So it's going to be a very, very interesting finish for all of these teams. But I still like Miami a lot, because, again, they just played great basketball. They play defense, they shoot the 3, and they're very well coached.
All right, Shaw, let's go ahead and round things out and talk about the moth in the room. No one's talking about this basketball team, and maybe to the degree that once Jabari Parker went down, there was not a whole lot of confidence that this team is going to be able to sustain what they've been able to do, which really in many respects has been truly miraculous. I mean, we came down hard on General Manager Hammond for, what this team has not accomplished as of yet. But in all fairness, this basketball team has just suffered the most, inopportune injuries and circumstances that has really stymied what has been, to many respects, a growingly popular basketball team. And that's the Milwaukee Bucks. And even as we speak right now, Shaw, they're only 1 game under 500. They are in the 8th seed as we're recording this podcast. And yet we're not still talking about them as being one of those teams that should be making the playoffs. Ultimately, we're not even acknowledging the greatness of what Giannis Antetokounmpo, like, we talk about how important and valuable Russell Westbrook is to the Oklahoma City Thunder. We talk about how James Harden is as MVP to not just the league right now, but even to the Houston Rockets. What about the play of Giannis Antetokounmpo? Because in many respects, what he's doing is a mirror image of what Kawhi Leonard has been doing for the San Antonio Spurs. And under the most extreme circumstances, Giannis Antetokounmpo has had to be that guy throughout the duration of this season. Even if we talked about guys like Chris Middleton and Jabari Parker, I don't think the Milwaukee Bucks would nearly be as good as what we've been seeing throughout this year without the type of play and the emergence of the Greek Freak and what he's been doing this year. And yet they're still needing more if they're expected to get into the Eastern Conference playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, we all know, and it's a foregone conclusion, that he's going to win the most improved player, and I don't know how many votes he's going to get for the most valuable player, although he definitely should be up there. And because of just, how you rule for the MVP, rather, it's always very, it's all over the place. It's the guy who has the best stats, it's the guy best stats on the best team, et cetera, et cetera. And I think you look at guys like LeBron, even Paul George, and Giannis in this situation. If you were to take them off their team, where would they be? And, if you're going by the most valuable player by those criteria, then, he's definitely way up there along with Westbrook. So, and Harden. So it's very difficult. But I think this Bucks team have had so many injuries, and the fact that they're still even in the race is a testament to what Giannis has been able to do. And then Jason Kidd shuffling this lineup around. There hasn't been any consistency. I haven't looked up the analytics, but I'd venture to guess that the Bucks have to have one of the more numerous in terms of rotations that they played out there in the NBA this season. I can't imagine what their 3, 4, and 5 man lineups have been. Like how many lines have played over 100 minutes together. It just seems like people are shuffling in and out from Greg Monroe to John Henson. They had a stint where they had Plumlee begin the year. They traded for Hibbert, and he's gone now. That center position has really been a revolving door. Thon Maker's now holding it down a little bit. So for me, the fact that they're even still in the conversation is a testament to what Giannis has been able to do all season.
Yeah, definitely. Look, Shaw, let's talk about this schedule, because they have a very interesting schedule when you look at what the Milwaukee Bucks will need to do to find themselves playing in this year's playoff chase, or actually being in the playoffs for this year. So this is, to me, it's interesting, because all of what we were talking about just a moment ago was the fact that all of these teams are going to have a hellacious schedule in the month of April, and the way that things are plotted out. The Milwaukee Bucks are one of the few teams, Shaw, that doesn't have to do a ton of traveling as far as the West Coast trip goes, like these other teams. They actually wind up playing the Mavericks, the Thunder, the Pacers, the Sixers, the Charlotte Hornets, and the Boston Celtics. By all accounts, when you compare that to what these other teams are going to have to do in order to put themselves in this playoff picture, this is a relatively easier schedule, and it's attainable for a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, who, while this is a team that has definitely improved their ability to score the basketball, but it's still more so of a defensive-minded type of basketball team in many respects, there are opportunities here where they can come out and win games. Now, the problem is that a lot of these games are on the road. Like their final 6 games, 4 of them are on the road. So it's going to be, it's critical for them to win the games that they can win in the month of March leading into April to give themselves a buffer. But how confident do you feel about the Milwaukee Bucks' chances of being able to hold that position and still be in the playoffs when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I like I said at the outset, I feel like they are going to get in. I think Giannis has been great. Chris Middleton coming back is a huge plus for them. Malcolm Brogdon as a rookie has been great in the backcourt, and I think they understand that Dellavedova isn't necessarily the answer, that they need to give Brogdon the bulk share of those minutes and have Delly kind of come in and be a spot helper at the point guard position. I think they have enough. And the schedule, I wouldn't say favors them. At least for them, they're coming off their West Coast road trip as we record this podcast. So, that part for them is pretty much going to be done. And, and they're going to have a legitimate chance. So I like their chances per se, because they are so long and they play great defense, and, they run their offense through Giannis and Chris Middleton. And the fact that Middleton is, as I keep saying, is one of the most underrated passers at the wing position in the game that we have right now. He's just, and he's not flashy. He just gets it done. And I really feel like his presence is helping Giannis, kind of save some of his minutes and his body down the final stretch of the season. All
right. Well, this is what it's all about, people. There's 3 spots that really are up for grabs, maybe a 4th. If you were to probably sit down Dion Waiters, Hassan Whiteside, and the Miami Heat boys, because they truly believe that they can come and chase down the Atlanta Hawks if they feel up to it. But ultimately, there are 3 spots. There are 5 teams. And so this last couple of weeks of basketball, there's a lot left to be played and a lot to be determined. And by all accounts, only 3 teams are going to be able to get in. 2 of them are going to have to start talking about what is it, the guys from TNT, gone fishing? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, how we talk about gone get. That's so it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be a wild ride. You and I, Shaw, we're going to be following this very, very, very closely. And listen, the impact and the ramifications about the teams that do get in and the teams that don't can have a lasting effect about how we look at this, not only this upcoming offseason, but what moves might be made as far as NBA drafts go and possible players getting traded in the offseason as well, too, should there be teams that should be in the playoffs don't make the playoffs. So this is going to be really interesting, to say the least. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. This segment of The Drop, we're going to kind of dig a little bit into the unrestricted free agents. There's a ton of players that are out there. And it's kind of like one of those type of situations that we get so heady into talking about the teams. And clearly we're talking about, the marquee players, the ones that, listen, their nest egg is taken care of, right? They're good. Next 3-4 years, we're going to be talking about the Steph Currys. We're going to be talking about the LeBron Jameses. We're going to be talking about the Jimmy Butlers and the Paul Georges. What we won't be talking about are some of these guys that have kind of been in the crossfires, in the crosshairs. They found themselves at a crossroad in where they're going to be? Could this be the last big contract that they make? What is it that they've done this year that has dictated whether or not these guys are deserving to receive a long-term deal, or whether or not you might even find these guys playing in the NBA come next year? So Sean and I decided to take this list of guys and kind of give this hell yeah or hell nah type of mentality. Like, would you really be paying these dudes uber amounts of money to come join your basketball team if you believe that they're going to help facilitate your team being successful?
Hell to the yeah.
Getting to the playoffs, maybe getting to a championship? Or do you believe like, nah, I think I'll pass?
Come on. Hell no. To the no, no, no. Hell to the no.
So Sean and I, we got a list of these guys. We're going to run through them. You know what I'm saying? And by the way, if you like the mannerisms and how we display it,
hell to the yeah,
please don't hesitate to let us know. We always love positive feedback in the way that we project our feelings about some of these players, okay? So here we go, Shaw. First person on the list, our man Dion Waiters, right? Top of the list, 2.8 mil. My man got a player option. Hell to the yeah or hell to the nah?
Hell to the yeah in terms of he's going to get that money. I think he's opting out, and I think he's going to give Miami the rights of first refusal without question. But $2.8 million is a damn steal for what he was able to do. He bet on himself, as we know waiters can only do.
He Joe Flacco'd the game, baby.
Without a doubt. And there's not a question in my mind that he's going to get more than $2.8 million. So hell yeah for Dion Waiters.
All right, hell to the yeah. All right, Derrick Rose. We've seen what's happened to him this year with the New York Knicks. Listen, by all accounts, he has not had the worst season. He has just been playing on a very bad basketball team. He really hasn't helped this basketball team look any better. But this has been a bad basketball team. But by all accounts, man, he's still an adequate point guard. He's just not MVP Derrick Rose. So hell to the yeah, hell to the nah.
Hell nah. I don't think he's going to see anywhere near $19 million a year going forward. So I think he's going to get a nice deal, maybe 2 or 3 years extension somewhere, but not with New York. And I don't think anybody's going to be paying him more than 14, 15 million. Again, 19 million right now, even in this market that's rising. Nah, hell nah.
Well, listen, I look at it from the fact that if you look at this upcoming NBA draft and the amount of point guards that are available and the talent, this is just a bad time to be Derrick Rose because, to your point, Shaw, unless you're really desperate for a point guard, which doesn't seem like there are that many teams that are doing that. If nothing else, most teams are really looking forward to the future. You just are now in a bad situation. Let's just put it like this. If Lonzo Ball gets drafted, don't be surprised if LeVar Ball probably gets more money right now than Derrick Rose probably will.
Ooh.
All right. Jeff Green, hell to the yeah or hell to the nah? What we talk about, Uncle Jay?
Cue the Whitney Houston. Hell to the nah. And ain't no way Jeff Green is going to see anywhere near $15 million next year. I don't care. Some team may talk themselves into, maybe we can turn it around, but I think we know who Jeff Green is at this point of his career.
I'm afraid he might not even be in the NBA come next year, bro.
Well, that's really funny you said that. So as I said earlier, I was listening to another podcast, Zach Lowe and Bill Simmons, and Zach Lowe said point blank, how about we pay Jeff Green $0? How about he gets $0 and he's not even in the league next year? And I really feel like somebody is going to trick themselves into saying, okay, they can rehabilitate him to some degree and make him a valuable or rotational piece in their roster. But at $15 million or higher, there's no way he should see that amount of money next year.
Maybe the very least, the veterans minimum. Just to be, you know what I'm saying? Just to show a little bit of to be cordial to him or something, right?
I think he can be on a roster. But not at that price tag.
All right, Serge Ibaka, is there urge to pay the surge? Hell to the yeah, hell to the nah?
I think the Raptors are, so hell to the yeah. I think they're going to give him more than the 12.3 that he's earning in this final contract year here. I think he'll get probably in that 15 to 16 range, if you will. It seems to be like a nice safe number for guys of his ilk. So, I'm not sold on it like, oh yeah, I'd want to do it, but I think hell yeah, the Raptors are definitely going to do it.
All right, Tyreek Evans, hell to the yeah, hell to the nah?
Whoo. I'm going to say hell to the no. He's making $11 million right now. There's a very strong possibility that if he proves to be healthy and workouts and things like that over the summer that, someone could pay him maybe a little bit more than that, maybe 12 or 13. But we know it's not going to be Sacramento. So I don't know where he fits in today's game, but I think there's I'm hedging hell to the that he's going to get a little bit more than he has, but it's probably more likely going to be a push.
All right. This is an interesting one I'm going to throw at you, Shaw. Andre Iguodala. Now, when I say this is an interesting one and I'm throwing at you, because what happens if the Golden State Warriors do turn out and win an NBA championship? He's an unrestricted free agent with $12 million. So as much as I would say hell to the nah, because of the fact that as Andre Iguodala comes off the bench for the Golden State Warriors, but plays significant minutes to another basketball team, that should mean what? So hell to the hell to the nah to Andre Iguodala.
I say hell to the they keep him, but hell to the no, they keep him at that price tag. Because remember, Steph and KD have to get their money this summer too.
Right.
And so even with an expanding cap, the reason that KD and Steph are where they're at is so that they can get a larger portion of that money. And those two guys are returning, and they're going to have to pay them whatever it is, $35 million a year. So that's going to squeeze Iguodala out in terms of the price tag that he may be looking for. And again, they're going to want to keep him, but I can't see him getting maybe even $10 million next year.
I was probably thinking the $7-8 million range come next year. I mean, realistically, I mean, he's up there in his years, but he's still got mileage on him. If nothing else, he's preserved his ability to be an effective basketball player. Although we did see him kind of, become, a little bit injury prone down the stretch towards the NBA Finals, but he's still a viable player. I think that if it's his passion to stay with the Golden State Warriors, that he will definitely take the pay cut, because I think he believes that he can be a part of one more run with the Golden State Warriors before he has to really look at his options about how much further he wants to see himself continuing to play basketball. But make no bones about it, there could be some basketball teams that are willing just to pry this team loose, the Warriors loose, that they'll figure out a way to throw more money at Iguodala to take him out of wanting to stay in Golden State if he had to take a pay cut.
Yeah, it's true. And they have to deal with Livingston, Pachulia, all those guys on their roster. So they have a lot of holes to fill. They don't have a lot of guys signed and committed money to next year. But again, you have two of the top 5 players in the league that you have to take care of. And you're going to take care of them. So it really is going to leave them kind of strapped, if you will. And people are going to have to take pay cuts in order to be on this winning roster. Definitely.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, our segment of The Drop, as we talk about guys that are possibly, they're going to be free agents, whether or not they're going to be expecting some healthy raises come this next season. Our sentiment is hell to the or hell to the nah. All right, let's keep it moving, Shaw. Zach Randolph, man, talk about that grit and grind duo. Zach Randolph is going to become an unrestricted free agent. Hell to the or hell to the nah to the $10 million.
What is Ebo now? Was he like 33, 34, something like that? I don't know.
33 or 34 in what, dog years? I'm sorry. Listen, man, he has definitely been diving in the fountain of youth, right?
Zebo's 35. So I think because Memphis is the way that they are, I think they probably give him one final, maybe 2 or 3 year deal, probably in that 13 to 15 range. So hell yeah, he's going to get a little bit of a pay raise, but not much. But again, it also depends what happens with Memphis in the postseason. If they get like just slaughtered and ran out the building, I don't know, maybe they look to go in another direction. But I think he's somebody who's endeared himself, and 14 and 8 at 35 years old, that's more than $10 million a year. So yeah, hell yeah, he's going to get a pay raise no matter what.
Oh, you said it with such confidence. I like that, right? So Zach Randolph, in my opinion, I think he will. It's kind of funny because in Memphis, they love their veteran guys, right? There's something about with Zach Randolph, and I think that goes a long way. And I think it's been supplemented by what you're seeing from Vince Carter. So I think if Vince Carter is planning to stay and he's like 45 years old, right? Like he's like 40 going on 45, but still plays like he's 25. I mean, you can expect to see the same thing with Zach Randolph because they figured out a formula to him to be effective for the Memphis Grizzlies. But to your point, Shaw, I think a lot can be said about what may happen in this upcoming playoff series that the Memphis Grizzlies participates in. Whether they move on or they get knocked out, it's how they get knocked out that I think is going to dictate the type of moves that they're going to have to make in the offseason to improve this roster. Because keep in mind, they've got money committed to Marc Gasol, they've got money committed to Conley, so they're going to have to make sure that this roster continues to show improvements against a very now competitive Southwest Division. More importantly, an up-tempo, fast-paced Western Conference. Taj Gibson, now this guy that's recently got traded from the Chicago Bulls to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, maybe to the seeing eye, he looks like an important piece for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Hell to the yeah, hell to the nah that we believe that Taj is going to be deserving of some increased money.
Yeah, he is. Hell yeah. Gibson is just one of those guys who's universally liked around the league. Tough guy, tough presence in the locker room. A guy who's a glue guy, if you will, can rebound, shoot, like do that pick and pop thing very, very well. Decent defender. So I think at $8.2 million, excuse me, even though he's only 30, well, not only, even though he's 31 years old, I think he's going to be in line for a nice little pay raise. Hell yeah.
Do you think that part of this move, and listen, I think maybe by all accounts, we might have to give kudos to Presti on this, because if the idea or the sentiment was that they were trying to groom Domantas Sabonis, whether or not they obviously try to move him to the three position, if he is locked in on a contract or the rookie deal to come in and basically ride behind Taj Gibson, you can afford the opportunity to pay Taj Gibson the money while you're trying to groom Domantas Sabonis to certainly be the guy in the future without compromising the hastened ability to put together a quality basketball team for Russell Westbrook to keep the Oklahoma City Thunder in the picture. So is that not a fair assessment on that?
I think it's fair, but I'm not 100% convinced that OKC is going to retain him. I think Gibson is going to attract a lot of interest out there, and he'll have a nice choice of places to go. So if does he want to stay in OKC and get a nice pay raise and play alongside Westbrook for an entire season? Great, and I think that helps them develop Sabonis as well too, as you alluded to. But I think he's going to have a choice. He's not going to be like, oh man, I have no options. I gotta stay in OKC because they can now pay me the most money. I don't think that's the situation at all. Taj is a guy who's universally liked and will definitely get some notion and some traction around the league.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about a few more other guys, Shaw, that is more that we want to believe is a hell to the yeah, hell to the nah. And it's a couple of interesting players too, because they're all in very unique situations. First person I want to talk about, Jeff Teague, for the Indiana Pacers. And look, man, $8 million unrestricted free agent. I don't know, bro. I'm a person that's leaning to a hell to the nah, because again, I'm just not seeing anything that warrants the idea that Jeff Teague as a point guard is done anything to totally increase the value or has magnified a team to optimize their potential with him as being the point guard.
Listen, I'm not going to disagree with you. Jeff Teague is not one of my favorite dudes and one of my favorite players in the NBA. But in today's market, $8 million for what he does and provides is it's a damn steal. So he's definitely going to get more money, no matter where he goes. And Indiana has every intention, at least as of right now, as we record, of keeping him, retaining him. But he's still young, and he's a guy who's going to get same thing in that $14 to $15 million range next year as a point guard. I mean, listen, just look at the type of people making that type of money right now. So you can't tell me that they are worse than Jeff Teague is. So he's definitely getting an increase of $8 million next season, no matter where he plays.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about the Phoenix Suns and Alex Len, 3.9 restricted free agent. So I got to tell you, man, the money is too low that you can't say he's not going to get thumbs up on a raise, right? I mean, I think that's automatic. But my question is he deserving of it? We see flashes of him, being a dominant type of player, and then there are just moments where he's just absolutely obsolete. So, I think the market is going to dictate more of the hell yeah, even though I feel like whatever it is that they're going to be paying this guy to be and whatever he contributes to wherever he goes to, whether it's still with the Phoenix Suns or to somewhere else, I feel like it's going to be a hell to the nah.
I think Phoenix is going to match the qualifying offer, or not match, sorry. They're going to extend a qualifying offer, rather, and then see what he gets. And, if somebody throws a bunch of money at him, and somebody might, and then they're probably going to let him walk. But they're not going to be like, all right, we're going to go ahead and extend you and pay you X amount of dollars right now, because I don't think they've seen enough. I don't think they're happy with what they have seen. And so I agree with you. It's only a hell yeah because of, he's still young and he's a big, and, he's coming off a rookie deal, so he's almost – Because
by now he really should be a premier player. He's had opportunities in Phoenix. It isn't as if in Phoenix there wasn't opportunities for him to be the man at the fourth spot, the 5 spot.
Because he was better last year. He was a lot better last year, especially down the stretch of the season when they're giving him these plus minutes. Now this year he's getting a chance to run, and Alan Williams is outplaying him. So Len is a guy who just hasn't really been able to stay healthy for the majority of his career as well. But something is missing this year. And again, like I said, I can't imagine that Phoenix is like, all right, let's make sure we keep this guy around. Hey, we'll send you a qualifying offer. But if you go out there and someone wants to pay you even $9-10 million a year, well, hey, happy trails. So yeah, I think he's out of there. But we'll see. But he's definitely going to get more money.
All right, couple more, Shaw. Contavious Caldwell-Pope, KCP. Interesting dilemma for him because, look, man, under all accounts, he's been probably one of the most valuable players for the Detroit Pistons that doesn't get talked about, I think, nearly as much as he's deserving of. He's really one of the few reasons why we even talked about the Detroit Pistons earlier on in being in the playoff picture, given their disappointing season.
Yeah, I think he's going to get more money, though. I like KCP. He's a guy who can play both ways. Obviously, he's a more defender than he is offensive player, but, can get hot in some stretches. So I think Detroit's definitely going to same thing. They're going to tender him a qualifying offer and see if he can go out there and get more money. And I think if it's reasonable, they'll definitely match. It's hard for me to predict where he would end up, but $2.9 million is nowhere near what it's going to be for him next year. So it's a hell yeah in terms of how much money he's going to get. Whether he stays with Detroit or not, I'm leaning towards yes, but either way, he's getting a lot more loot.
All right, Chicago Bulls, Michael Carter-Williams. Dude, I can't believe that we're talking about this guy in this particular realm, of conversation. The guy was just a rookie of the year not too long ago. And I mean, this man has been bounced around more teams, and I think he's had the opportunity to hold his own rookie of the year trophy, bro. 2.5 mil. Completely, a non-factor or a non-starter with the Chicago Bulls. Hoiberg doesn't know what to do with this guy. What do we make of MCW? Hell to the yeah, hell to the nah?
For me, it's a hell no. I don't think the Bulls are going to tender him an offer. And I feel like he's a guy who might have to sign some sort of one-year prove-it deal. Now, again, if the veteran minimum is more than, 2.5 or whatever it is next year, then yeah, he's going to get a raise. But I think he's going to be struggling to find a job in a position. He's going to be alongside, kind of the Jeff Greens of the world, if you will, just trying to say, hey, you know what, I should still be in this league and still should be able to play. He's not going to be in Chicago. I'd be very stunned if that was the case for him. And I can't imagine that there's going to be a bunch of teams with a whole lot of offers for MCW.
All right. Finally, Shaw, legacy, legend. Well, the name has it. And it's kind of funny because this guy, I guess you could say maybe has found a home playing with the Atlanta Hawks. But Tim Hardaway Jr., man, what do we make of his situation, his status? Is he deserving of a raise? Is he a hell to the yeah, hell to the nah?
Hell to the yeah. Hardaway has acquitted himself extremely well in this Atlanta franchise. Stepping up for Kyle Korver once he was moved out of Atlanta, and he's played very well, especially in spurts. I think he still struggles with consistency, but even still struggles with minutes. And I think Atlanta's, Coach Bud sometimes like, all right, we want to go a more defensive route, and they play Cephalosha more so than Hardaway, et cetera, et cetera. But Hardaway is a guy who's shown ability that he can get hot and he can carry an offense for spurts. And again, kind of like how Jamal Crawford can get hot and then carry an offense for like 4 or 5 minutes. That's the type of talent he's shown this year. So whether or not that's believable and sustainable, I guess we'll find out. But I think it's earned him definitely a healthy pay raise, more than the $1.5 million that he's getting on his rookie contract.
Well, there you have it, man. I mean, look, man, we got a ton of players that are going to be available in the market come this offseason. Some of these guys definitely have earned their keep. Other of them have miles to go before they sleep. So it'll be a very interesting situation, especially for us, because we love the free agency talk. So their names are going to be on our free agency tracker come this upcoming off season. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Come on. Hell no. To the no, no, no. Hell to the no.
And this was The Drop.
Coast to coast.
Coast to
Time now to go coast to coast, discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
Man, this is a name that we haven't thrown out in quite some time. Carlos Boozer. Boozer gaining interest from teams like the Miami Heat and the LA Clippers. What do we make about Boozer making a return back to the game?
Well, he's out in China right now playing with, I think it's the Guangdong Tigers, I think it is. And they are deep in a playoff run out there. So it's a matter of can he even get back over in time. But Boozer, veteran presence, guy who traditionally has been a plus rebounder. I don't know how he fits into the Heat so much. I can understand why the Clippers may want him, but the Heat situation seems to be a little bit, leery to me. But hey, at least he's he's somebody who is a veteran guy who has been there and can definitely help some of the young guys if they were to go to Miami.
All right, speaking of the Los Angeles Clippers, Doc Rivers has been denying rumors about making a return to the Orlando Magic. I find that a little amusing, considering the fact that if he would ever have an opportunity to make a return, I would think it would be to the Boston Celtics, especially amidst the rumors that Brad Stevens had been made an offer to possibly coach the Indiana Hoosiers after they fired Tom Crean. So the fact that Doc Rivers is saying, I want this thing to come full circle in Orlando, I don't know about that, especially under that organization and the way it's being handled right now.
Well, I think it would be a culture change. So Rivers would go there and kind of be the exact same role that he is in LA. Having he'd probably replace Hennigan and still be the head coach as well. So it's in terms of him getting more responsibilities within the Orlando situation. And he lives in Orlando and in the offseason and all that too. So him coming out and denying it now, I think is fine. And what he has to do obviously is his team is gearing up for a playoff push. But I wouldn't be surprised, if this gained a little bit more traction, especially if the Clippers get bounced, especially in the first round or something like that, and that Clippers organization has to go some sort of overhaul. So he might be gone, but right now he's denying.
Oh, look at you shaking things up already, man. Woo! Coast to coast.
Smoke, there's fire, bro.
Smoke, there's fire, right? Tyson Chandler. There was apparently rumors that there were some serious deals at the trade deadline that he could have been, he could have appeased himself to, but he chose to stay with the Phoenix Suns. Now, is this really about his dedication to the Phoenix Suns, or is it about that Skrilla that he's been making off of Phoenix?
Well, I think it's just a matter of him, being at the age that he is and accepting a role to be kind of a veteran mentor to these guys and not wanting to uproot where his situation in the middle of the season.
Could have been doing that for the Boston Celtics. What you talking about?
Well, like I said, I think he's happy where he is currently, and that's not to say that won't change over the summer, but I think he maybe just wanted to finish things out this year. This is story coming from the Arizona Republic, saying that, okay, they approached him and said, hey, would you want us to move you to a contender? We're happy to have you, and because you've been great. And there was a great story on 16 Wins a Ring a couple weeks ago about Chandler and how he's accepted this role of being this veteran guy in Phoenix, and he really does like it. So I don't know that it will continue to be that same case over the summer, but Tyson Chandler is a guy who many teams can still use and still covet. All
right, finally, Shaw, on a very how do we put this? On a carb kept upbeat note, right? Potato messaging is the new rave to the NBA. All right.
This is amazing.
So this is and it's interesting. If people don't know about this, then I would encourage you to go check out SB Nation. But Potato Parcel is in cahoots with the NBA, sending out over 150 potatoes. And there are messages that are actually being put on potatoes that have been sent to the players. This now has been the new craze. Now, mind you, the guys that created this concept were on Shark Tank, and they got vilified on Shark Tank, even though they had already made a little over $250,000, right, for sales. But these dudes kept at it, and now they are the new talk of the town in the NBA. Potato Parcel, keeping it strong. Word to the French fry.
That's what up, man. I feel like we need to holler at Potato Parcel and have them become one of our sponsors or something, because I said, I think it's cool that, these NBA players, and especially at this stage of the season, I think that's the kind of cool thing for me about it, is that it's, end of the season, things are kind of really dragging down, kind of dog days of the, right before the playoffs, and they're getting these real positive messages on these potatoes. Now, I don't understand how their sustainability, what happens to the ink or the graphics on the potato, how long do they last? If you leave potatoes sitting around for a little while, it starts to grow. And it kind of gross. So I just don't know what the shelf life of these things are. But I think it's a really cute and kind of funny story, especially for these players now getting some nice messages, some positive messages to close out their season.
Mark Cuban called it stupid on a stick.
Cuban has had one hell of a year himself. So.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I applaud it, because sometimes, everybody thinks that it's supposed to be now and forever. We can just appreciate for what we deal with the here and the now. I mean, my goodness, man, we have the mannequin challenge. The mannequin challenge. What, think everybody who's going to continue to do this, they're going to have a mannequin challenge TV show? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like we have lip sync battle. I mean, there are just some things that you could just appreciate for the now. And kudos to Riyad Beckett and Alex Craig these guys who are the founders of Potato Parcel found a way to take a novel concept in a very technical savvy and social media centric genre in the NBA, I'm sorry, not genre, but sports genre in the NBA, and applied what they did to allow it to maximize players' enthusiasm and involvement in making this thing spread like wildfire. I mean, will this thing last throughout the duration of this year? Probably not. May probably go as far as to what you see to the NBA Finals. But ultimately, it's definitely something that we can take from this and enjoy ourselves thoroughly, man. Kudos to those dudes, bro.
Yeah, shout out, man. Potato Parcel, one time for you guys. Hey, man, send us some potatoes, yo. Let's see what's good. NBA Baseline, holla at us, yo.
Definitely. Hey, listen, don't be surprised if they get in cahoots with Five Guys. Yo, I'm just saying, it's a novel concept. Listen, we're already marketing for these dudes, and they don't even know it, right?
Yeah, we need some royalties, man. We come up with a lot of great ideas. We need to go on Shark Tank.
Word to that, man. Hell to the yeah. Hell to the yeah on that one, brother. Awesome show this week, Shaw. A lot of stuff that we definitely covered. Interesting developments with the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and definitely things that we have to start looking forward to with regards to some of these unrestricted free agents and whether or not they're going to find themselves with healthy salary increases come this upcoming offseason. There's a lot of things that are happening even as we speak, not always about the top-heavy teams, quote unquote, that are handling their biz right now. There's still a lot of work to be done as we start hedging out towards the end of this regular season.
Yeah, it's going to be a great final ride these final few weeks. As you know, as always, we'll be right there covering it all, man. So as you alluded to, another great show. Can't wait to see how everything plays out. Hope everyone's brackets are all right. I'm sure they're pretty much busted after this weekend, but nevertheless, man,
it's over if you pick Nova. I'm just letting you know it's over if you pick Nova.
Yeah, and we had our guy Chris Klein come on and kind of convinced me that Florida State, they were going to be good with their prospect. And they got routed over the weekend. So it said, hey, you know what? I'm going to stick to the NBA, man. And like I said, it's going to be a great final few weeks. So I'm going to dig into that and leave this March Madness to the professionals.
Well, we'll talk about our NBA madness that's going to be taking place in the next couple of weeks. So keep us locked in here of the Baseline NBA podcast. Callie, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do. Continue to check us out and keep us plugged. And we'll catch up with you next time.